Grace Walker's eyes were watering as she stared at the birth certificate on her phone screen. The name read Elijah Monroe, but the date, March 15, 2002, made her blood run cold. The hospital was the same one where she'd given birth 27 years ago. The same hospital where doctors had told her that her newborn son, David, had tragically died. But the young man she'd just photographed this document from was very much alive, sitting in the next room, laughing at something on his laptop. And he looked exactly like the baby boy she'd buried 8 years ago after a car accident. Grace's mind raced with an impossible question. What if she'd never lost her son at all? If you're loving this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And let us know in the comments, where are you watching from today? 8 years had passed since David's death. The car accident had been sudden, violent, final. Grace had identified his body at the morgue, her husband Marcus holding her as she collapsed. They'd buried him on a gray October morning, and part of Grace had been buried with him. She'd learned to carry grief like a stone in her pocket, touching it throughout the day, reminding herself it was still there. Today, that stone felt heavier than usual. It was David's birthday. He would have been 27 years old. Grace sat in her usual corner at Riverside Coffee House, a sanctuary she'd discovered in the months after the funeral. She cradled her mug between both hands, watching the steam rise and disappear, much like the dream she'd once had for David's future. The bell above the door chimed, and something made her glance toward the entrance. Time stopped. A young man walked in with sandy blonde hair that caught the sunlight streaming through the windows. When he smiled at the barista, Grace saw it. That crooked smile that lifted more on the left side than the right. The same smile she'd seen in countless photographs. The same smile she'd kissed goodnight for 19 years. Her coffee mug slipped from her fingers, clattering against the saucer. Hot liquid splashed across the table, but Grace barely noticed. She couldn't tear her eyes away. It wasn't just his face, though God, that face was David's face, aged up exactly as she'd imagined during countless sleepless nights. It was everything. The way he walked with a slight bounce in his step. The way he ran his hand through his hair when he studied the menu board. Even the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other while waiting in line. Then he ordered, and Grace's heart stopped completely. Caramel macchiato, extra shot, please. The exact same drink David had ordered every single time. Grace stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. She needed air, needed to think. But her legs moved toward him instead, pulled by an invisible thread connecting her broken heart to this impossible stranger. He collected his drink and nearly collided with her. "Oh, sorry," he said, that crooked smile appearing again. Up close, Grace could see more details. The same green eyes flecked with gold. The same small scar on his left eyebrow. David had gotten that falling off his bike at age 6. Grace's voice cracked. "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but do I know you?" The young man's smile turned polite but confused. "I don't think so, ma'am. I just moved to town a couple weeks ago." "What's your name?" The question came out more desperately than Grace intended. Elijah Monroe." He extended his hand, warm and alive in hers. "Nice to meet you." "Grace Walker." "Where are you from, Elijah?" "Portland originally, well, Salem mostly. I'm here for grad school, architecture program at the university." He gestured to a nearby table where his laptop bag sat. Architecture. David had dreamed of becoming an architect. He'd filled notebooks with sketches of buildings and bridges, impossibly beautiful structures that existed only in his imagination. Grace had saved every single one of those notebooks. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Marcus and scrolled through photo albums on her phone. Pictures of David as a baby, as a toddler, as the confident young man he'd become before the accident. Then she pulled up the photo she'd taken of Elijah that afternoon and placed the images side by side. Marcus stirred beside her, squinting at the bright screen. "Grace, it's 3 in the morning. What are you—" He stopped mid-sentence as he saw the comparison. His breath caught. "Who is that?" "His name is Elijah Monroe. I met him at the coffee shop today." "Marcus, look at him, really look." Marcus took the phone, zooming in on Elijah's face, then switching to David's photos. Back and forth, back and forth. His hands began to shake. That's not possible. It's just a resemblance, just a coincidence? Grace finished. That's what I thought too. But Marcus, it's not just his face. It's everything. The way he moves, his mannerisms, his voice. He ordered David's exact coffee order. He's studying architecture. How many coincidences before it becomes something else? Marcus set the phone down forcefully. Grace, honey, I know today is hard. It's David's birthday and you're emotional. But David is gone. We buried him 8 years ago. This young man is just someone who happens to share some features. But Grace heard the doubt creeping into her husband's voice, saw the way his eyes kept darting back to the phone screen. Over the next 3 weeks, Grace returned to Riverside Coffee House every single day, learning Elijah's schedule, timing her visits to coincide with his. Gradually, cautiously, she began conversations. She learned that he came every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, that he preferred the table by the window, that he was exactly as kind and thoughtful as David had been. Grace, right? Elijah said one Thursday, looking up with a smile. You're here a lot. Do you work nearby? Retired teacher, Grace lied. I like the atmosphere here. Tell me about it. Way better than the university library. He gestured to the empty chair. You're welcome to sit if you want. I could use a break from these architectural theory texts anyway. And so it began. Grace learned he was 25 years old, raised by a single mother named Catherine Monroe, who had worked as an accountant. Catherine had died 2 years ago from breast cancer, leaving Elijah alone in the world with no siblings, no extended family, no one. I'm sorry for your loss, Grace said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Thanks. She was an amazing mom. Gave me everything. I wish she could have seen me get into this graduate program. She would have been so proud. Elijah's eyes misted over. Sorry. I don't usually get emotional with people I barely know. Don't apologize, Grace said gently. Grief doesn't follow social conventions. During their fourth conversation, Elijah mentioned it almost casually while discussing a family tree assignment. It's kind of hard to trace your roots when you don't know where they start. I'm adopted. Never knew my birth parents. Private adoption through some agency that doesn't exist anymore. I used to wonder about them when I was younger, but eventually I stopped. Catherine was my mom in every way that mattered. Grace's heart stopped. Adopted. The word echoed in her mind like a gunshot. She forced herself to keep her expression neutral, but inside, every nerve was screaming. What if David hadn't died as a baby? What if something had happened at the hospital? That night, Grace told Marcus about Elijah being adopted. Her husband's face went pale. Grace, no. Whatever you're thinking, no. He's adopted. He doesn't know his birth parents. He's the right age. He looks exactly like David. Consider what? Marcus's voice rose. That our son didn't actually die as a baby. That there was some conspiracy. Grace, we buried David. We identified him. But Grace couldn't let it go. She invited Elijah to dinner, and when he visited their home the following Saturday, he wandered to the photo wall in the hallway. He stopped in front of a picture of David at age 19, taken just weeks before the accident. Mrs. Walker, is this your son? Grace and Marcus joined him. Yes, that's David. He passed away 8 years ago. I'm so sorry. Elijah leaned closer, his brow furrowing. This is going to sound weird, but we could be brothers. The resemblance is kind of uncanny, right? He pulled out his phone and held it next to the picture. See? Same nose, same eyes. It's really strange. Marcus made a choked sound and left the room abruptly. Grace heard the bathroom door close down the hall. That night, Marcus said what Grace had been thinking. I need to know. God help me, Grace. I need to know if that's our son. Grace made a decision. When Elijah mentioned needing to grab a textbook from his apartment, she offered to drive him. While he searched his bedroom, muttering about his lost textbook, Grace stood in his small living room, her heart pounding. She knew this was wrong, but she'd come too far to turn back. Her eyes scanned the apartment. A small desk sat against one wall, and there, partially visible under a notebook, was a manila folder with adoption records written on the tab. Grace glanced toward the bedroom. She had maybe 30 seconds. She crossed to the desk on silent feet, lifted the notebook, and pulled out her phone. Her hands shook so badly the first photo was blurry. She steadied herself and photographed the birth certificate. Name, Baby Boy Monroe, later named Elijah Thomas Monroe. Date of birth, March 15, 2002. Place of birth, Mercy General Hospital. Mother, Vanessa Hartley. Father, unknown. March 15th. David had been born on March 15th, 2000, 2 years apart to the day at the same hospital. Found it, Elijah's voice called from the bedroom. Grace shoved the folder back and stepped away, her heart hammering. By the time Elijah emerged, she was studying a photo on his bookshelf, her face carefully neutral. That evening, locked in her office, Grace searched for Vanessa Hartley. It took less than 10 minutes to find her, a registered nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, living just 2 towns over. Grace dug deeper and found an old newspaper article from 28 years ago about new hires at Mercy General Hospital. There, listed among the names, Vanessa Hartley, RN, joining the maternity ward staff. Vanessa had worked in the maternity ward where David was born. Grace's hands flew over the keyboard, searching frantically. She found a photo from a hospital newsletter showing the maternity ward staff at a Christmas party. There was young Vanessa, smiling, and standing next to her was Dr. Helena Sterling, the pediatrician who had treated David during his first year of life. Then Grace found a buried article from 22 years ago. Mercy General Hospital faces. Questions over maternity ward practices. Investigation opened. Following anonymous tip regarding adoption irregularities. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture too horrible to process. Grace showed Marcus everything, the birth certificate, the research, the connections. Her husband listened in stunned silence. "So what are you saying?" he finally asked. "That there was some kind of baby stealing operation?" "I don't know what I'm saying, but I need to find out. I need to talk to Vanessa Hartley." The next day, Grace waited in the hospital parking lot. At 3:15, Vanessa emerged from the employee entrance, looking tired, her scrubs rumpled. Grace got out of her car and walked toward her. "Vanessa Hartley?" Vanessa looked up, startled. "Yes? Can I help you?" "My name is Grace Walker. I need to talk to you about your son." The color drained from Vanessa's face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Elijah Monroe. I know you're his birth mother." Vanessa's eyes went wide with panic. I can't." She looked around the parking lot. "Please, leave me alone." She tried to walk past, but Grace blocked her path. "I know you worked at Mercy General Hospital 27 years ago. I know you were in the maternity ward. I know something happened there involving Dr. Helena Sterling and illegal adoptions." "Stop," Vanessa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please stop. My son was born at Mercy General on March 15th, 2000. David Walker. 2 years later, Elijah was born there. Same date, same hospital. And Elijah looks exactly like my David. So I need you to tell me what happened." Vanessa collapsed against her car, sobbing. "I can't. I've kept this secret for so long." "Then help me understand," Grace said, her voice breaking. "Please, if you ever loved your son, if you ever felt the way I feel about mine, please tell me what happened." Vanessa looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. "Not here. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street. Meet me there in an hour." An hour later, in a booth at the back of the cafe, Vanessa confessed, "I need you to understand. I was 20 years old. A new nurse drowning in student loans, terrified of losing my job. What I did will haunt me until I die." "What did you do?" Grace asked. Vanessa took a shaky breath. "Dr. Sterling ran an illegal adoption ring out of Mercy General for almost 5 years. She identified wealthy couples desperate for babies and poor mothers who wouldn't fight back. She would tell the mothers their babies died during or shortly after birth. Death certificates would be issued. But the babies were alive. She'd arrange private adoptions through a fake agency. Adoptive parents paid enormous fees, $50,000, sometimes $100,000. She split the money with key staff members who helped cover things up. Grace felt sick. And you were one of them. Vanessa nodded. I assisted in 3 cases. The first time Dr. Sterling told me the mother was a drug addict, she made it sound like we were saving the child. The money, $3,000, it paid off 2 months of rent and loans. I thought I'd never do it again. But then I did. And again. Tell me about March 15th, 2000. Vanessa closed her eyes. You gave birth to a healthy baby boy that morning, David. I was there. I saw you hold him. You were moved to recovery, and the baby was taken for routine checks. She opened her eyes. Dr. Sterling told me to prepare for a transfer. But when I got to the nursery, she changed her mind. She said you had too much family around, too many witnesses, too risky. So she chose a different baby, one whose mother was alone. That baby was given to Catherine Monroe. Grace couldn't breathe. So David wasn't taken? Not then. You took your son home, you raised him, but Dr. Sterling never forgot about him. She'd seen your financial records, knew you came from money, and she'd seen David during his first-year checkups. He was beautiful, healthy, perfect. What happened? Grace whispered. Vanessa's face crumpled. I wasn't there, but from what I pieced together later, Dr. Sterling arranged something 2 years after David was born. She called you in for a special appointment. But you never made it. There was a car accident on the way to the hospital. The accident, Grace said numbly. We were T-boned by a drunk driver. David was in the back seat. He was in critical condition for 3 days. Then he died, Vanessa said softly. According to the hospital records, according to the death certificate signed by Dr. Sterling. But Grace, the drunk driver who hit you, had no prior arrests. No history of alcoholism. He disappeared completely 6 months later. You're saying it was staged. You're saying David was taken during the chaos. I can't prove it. But yes, I believe David was taken from you that day. Then who did we bury? Vanessa shook her head. I don't know. Maybe a baby who actually died around that time. Maybe falsified records. And Elijah? I got pregnant by accident when I was 22. I was terrified, broke, alone. Dr. Sterling heard and contacted me. She offered me $75,000 to give up my baby for private adoption. Catherine Monroe adopted my son. I gave birth at Mercy General and never held him. I took the money and tried to forget. So Elijah is your biological son, not David. Yes, but Grace, look at the dates. David was taken in 2002. Elijah was born in 2002, March 15th, the same birthday. Why would Sterling give my baby the same birthday as the boy she'd stolen? Grace's mind raced. Unless she was covering her tracks, making it harder to trace. I'll give you a DNA sample if you want, Vanessa said. We can test if Elijah is my biological child. If he's not mine, and he looks exactly like your David. Grace pulled out her phone and showed Vanessa the comparison photos. Vanessa's face went white. Oh my God, they're identical. Will you testify? If I go to the police, will you tell them everything? Vanessa hesitated, then nodded. Yes. I've been waiting 25 years to confess. Grace spent the next week in numb determination. She and Marcus contacted a private investigator who verified Vanessa's story and found Catherine Monroe's financial records showing a $100,000 withdrawal on March 20th, 2002, 5 days after Elijah's supposed birth. Grace obtained DNA samples from Elijah during lunch at her house, carefully bagging his water glass. She sent everything to a private lab along with samples from herself, Marcus, and Vanessa. The wait was excruciating. 7 days later, the investigator called. The results are in. Grace, Marcus, Elijah is your biological son, 99.9% match, and he has no genetic relation to Vanessa Hartley. He's David. The world stopped. Grace and Marcus held each other and wept, for the son they'd buried who wasn't their son, for the years lost, for the impossible miracle and unbearable truth. They invited Elijah over on a Sunday evening. He arrived cheerful, carrying thesis sketches. These are gorgeous, Grace said, tears in her eyes. Thanks. My advisor thinks I should submit them for a prize. Elijah, Grace began, her voice breaking. There's something we need to tell you, something important. And it's going to be very difficult to hear. Elijah's smile faded. You're kind of freaking me out. Marcus took over. Do you remember when you mentioned you were adopted? Yeah. We've been doing some research. Grace pulled out her phone, showing him the comparison photos. This is our son David, who died 8 years ago. And this is you. Okay. We've established we look alike. Elijah, Marcus said quietly. We had your DNA tested, compared it to ours. You're our biological son. You're David. Silence. Elijah stared at them, waiting for the punchline. What? That's not possible. I have a birth certificate, records. All forged, Grace said gently. Catherine bought you from a doctor who ran an illegal adoption ring. That doctor stole you from us when you were 2. We thought you died in a car accident, but you've been alive this whole time. Elijah stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. No, this is insane. You're telling me my entire life is a lie? That my mom was a criminal? That I'm not who I think I am? Catherine loved you, Grace said quickly. But yes, the adoption wasn't legal. You were stolen from us. Stolen. Elijah backed toward the door, tears streaming down his face. So I'm him? I'm David? You were David, Marcus said. Now you're Elijah. You're both. I don't. Elijah grabbed his jacket. I can't. This is too much. I need to leave. Don't touch me. You're strangers. Catherine was my mother. And now you're telling me she bought me? That everything I knew is wrong? We have proof, Marcus said. DNA results, financial records, testimony. I don't know who I am anymore, Elijah whispered. He grabbed his things and headed for the door. Don't contact me, just leave me alone. He left. Grace collapsed in the doorway, sobbing. Marcus held her, both of them shattered. 3 weeks passed with no word. Grace sent one text. We love you. We're here whenever you're ready. He didn't respond. Then one evening, Elijah called. I took a DNA test myself, through a commercial service. I sent samples to you and Marcus too. The results came back today. 99.9% probability. I've been reading everything, the investigation, Sterling's disappearance, Catherine's records, Vanessa's testimony. Can I come over? I want to hear about David, about what I lost. Elijah arrived looking exhausted. Show me, he said. Show me who I was. Grace pulled out photo albums. That was a week before you were born. You were overdue. She turned pages. This is the day you were born, March 15th, 2000 at 6:47 in the morning. You weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She showed him more photos. You were colicky for 3 months. Then you became the happiest baby. You loved music. I'd sing to you, and you'd kick your legs and clap. This was your first birthday. You got a toy truck and named it Vroom. Vroom? Elijah let out a choked laugh. You weren't very creative yet, Marcus said, smiling through tears. This was the last photo we have, Grace said quietly. 2 days before the accident. 2 days before we lost you. Elijah touched the photo with trembling fingers. I don't remember any of this. Catherine is the only mother I remember. Her apartment, her laugh, her Sunday pancakes. That's my childhood. These pictures might as well be of a stranger. I know, Grace said, and I'm not asking you to erase Elijah or pretend Catherine wasn't your mother. She raised you. She loved you. Those memories are real. But she also bought me, Elijah said bitterly. She participated in a crime. We don't know how much she knew initially, Marcus said carefully. Maybe Sterling lied to her. Does it matter? The result is the same, 25 years of lies. They sat in heavy silence. What happens now? Elijah asked. Legally, what am I supposed to do? That's entirely up to you, Grace said. You're an adult. You decide who you want to be. I don't know who that is anymore. Over the following months, slow reconciliation began. Elijah came for Sunday dinners. Grace and Marcus shared stories about David's first 2 years. and Elijah shared stories about his childhood. They were strangers getting to know each other, bound by DNA and tragedy. One Sunday, Elijah arrived carrying a folder of architectural drawings. "My thesis project. I changed directions after everything. This is a house for a family recovering from trauma. Spaces for togetherness and solitude. Places to remember and places to heal." Grace studied the drawings. "It's beautiful. It's us," Elijah said. "David and Elijah and Grace and Marcus all existing together, all finding a way forward." Marcus put his hand on Elijah's shoulder. "We're so proud of you." "I've been thinking about the name thing," Elijah said. "Legally, I'm David Walker, but David died 8 years ago, and I've been Elijah Monroe for 25 years. I don't want to erase either identity. What about David Elijah Walker Monroe? All of it. All of who I am and was, and I'm becoming." Grace took his hand. "That would be perfect." 6 months later, Grace and Marcus attended David Elijah's thesis presentation. He presented his design for the trauma recovery house, speaking about identity, loss, and reconstruction. Afterward, he caught Grace's eye and smiled, that crooked smile. Grace smiled back through tears, not tears of grief anymore, but of impossible gratitude. One evening, David Elijah said, "Sometimes I have these dreams. I dream about being held by someone who smells like vanilla and lavender, about a voice singing a song I can't quite make out. When I wake up, I feel safe, like some part of me remembers being loved before Catherine." Grace's breath caught. She'd worn vanilla lavender perfume for decades. "Do you remember the song?" He hummed a few uncertain notes. Grace recognized it, the Irish lullaby she'd sung every night. She began singing softly, "Tu-ra-lu-ra-lu-ral." David Elijah's eyes went wide. "That's it, I remember, I actually remember." Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them. They sat together, crying and laughing, marveling at love's resilience, at how it leaves traces even when everything else is stolen. Later, at David's grave, the grave holding a stranger, the three of them placed flowers. "I'm sorry we didn't know," Grace said. "Thank you for leading us to the truth." As they walked away together, David Elijah between Grace and Marcus, Grace thought about miracles. Maybe they weren't about divine intervention. Maybe they were about refusing to accept the impossible, about loving someone so fiercely that not even death could sever the bond. They would never get back the 25 years lost. David Elijah would never fully remember his first 2 years, but they had now. They had dinners and conversations and Sunday mornings and a future stretching ahead. Sometimes, late at night, Grace would hear David Elijah humming that Irish lullaby, and she'd smile through her tears, grateful for the impossible second chance, for the miracle hidden inside tragedy, for the son who came back from the dead. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more emotional storytelling. I'd love to read your story.